And we somehow lost your audio. I have no idea how. Even though. As always with live video, folks, sometimes there's a few technical difficulties, even though we just tested and checked this. Let's make sure there's a blue light on your microphone, Kev. And let's not worry, we can trim a lot of this out. So if you're joining us now, just bear with us. Let me see. I'll let you know if... Okay, go ahead. So Kev will be back in a minute. My name's Danny Colella. I'm producing the event today, so hang with us. We will trim this out for the replay audience as well. You there? Okay, yeah, I hear you.
You can?
I can hear you. Yes, you are. You're good.
All right. Okay, fantastic. Hey, everybody. Sorry about the little technical glitch. Evidently, the as we like to say in the therapy world, Mercury must be in retrograde, because things are getting a little funny. This is Kevin Petersen, owner and founder of the Chronic Hope Institute, and today on June 18th, we're going to do our monthly Ask Me Anything, and we put a call out on all of our social media for people to ask questions about working with families that struggle with addiction, because that is our specialty. And we got a whole bunch of great questions. Now, if you're watching live and you want to ask a question, go ahead and pop something in the comments. And you can be anonymous too if you want. That's okay. But we'll go ahead and do our best to spend about an hour answering any question that comes. And of course, if no questions come, I'll just start talking about my favorite topic, me, and we'll just kind of bounce through that whole thing, and we will go from there. So I have my main man, Danny Colella, on the back end of this, doing the producing and making everything happen. And here's our first question from Diane M. In Ohio. My son has been heavily binge drinking alcohol since college. He has recently been getting in a lot of trouble, including getting his second DUI. I suspect more drugs are being consumed in our home. Where do we even start to get him the help he needs? Okay, great question. Thank you so much, Diane. Here's where I would start. This is, by the way, why I wrote the book, Chronic Hope, Families and Addiction. And the first book I wrote was called Chronic Hope, Parenting the Addicted Child. And I'm not just pimping the book. The reason why I want you to get the books are that there's a very direct plan. And we start off with what we call Plan A. And Plan A is we're going to set boundaries in 3 categories. The first category is drugs and alcohol. And what we're going to say is going forward today, right now, we're going to start doing drug testing and we're going to start doing breathalyzing. And if you pass the test, great, no problem, everything's cool. If you don't pass the test, then we're going to start having some more limitations and some more structure around the house of, if you're living here for free, then you probably need to find another place to live. If you're, eating our food, if you're using our internet, we're going to start saying, well, if you're going to choose to lead an alcohol and drug lifestyle, then you're going to have to start paying your own way, because in order to be a member of the family here, you have to be sober, and sober people get to afford the benefits. I hope that makes sense. It'll make more sense when you take a look at some of my old videos on the YouTube channel or listen to some of our podcasts on the Chronic Hope Institute podcast on Apple and Spotify. And it's a very detailed plan. So what I want you to do, Diane, is go in and start reading this stuff and taking a look at it, and then give me an email or a call or a text, and we can set up a time to review the plan. We might even be able to work together online like this. We would love that. And it looks like we have a question. Danielle says, I have a question. What do I do if my loved one just won't stop? How do I make them? Can I? Well, okay. So the good news, bad news is you cannot make anyone do anything. And that's the number one thing to remember. What you can do is, like we just told Diane, we can set boundaries, okay? And we can hold them accountable. And we can say, look, I love you, but I'm not willing to participate in your drug and alcohol lifestyle. So therefore, what we're going to do is, if you want to be part of the family, if you want to live here for free, whatever the arrangement is, if you want to be part of my life, I need you to respect my wishes and that you don't drink or don't do drugs. I mean, if you're living under my roof, I can say that permanently. If it's about just engaging with a family member as you go, that would be more along the lines of, hey, in order for us to spend time together, this is what I would do. This is what I would need. And here's my example. In 1990, my dad and I were driving together from San Luis Obispo to Palo Alto, California. It's about a 4-hour drive. And what he did is he said in the first 5 minutes, Kevin, you're my only son and I love you, but I cannot continue to respect your way of life. You're an alcoholic, drug addict. I believe that you're, living a very duplicitous lifestyle. And until you're willing to address that, we're going to hold boundaries with you and we're going to keep you at a distance. But the important thing, Danielle and Diane, is that what my dad did is he also said, if you're willing to get help or want to get help, we'll help you. So it's important to hold boundaries, but then offer them a solution. They may not take the solution. If they don't take the solution, that's totally on them, and that's okay. But it's important that the family members and the loved ones start by saying, I'm not going to participate in this anymore. And here's what that's going to look like. I hope that answered your question. All right, let's see if we got anybody else. An anonymous question. Fantastic. Here goes. My sister-in-law has an alcohol addiction that her husband will not admit, and her kids are paying for it right now. Yeah, and that's what happens. I mean, addiction and alcoholism are families' diseases. So we have family gatherings at the time, and they typically include wine or beer. Some of the family thinks that we should not have alcohol at those events, but my sister-in-law has not admitted she's an alcoholic. Great question, Anonymous, and here's the answer. We're having these are 3 in a row of kind of like the exact same thing. Here's the deal. It behooves you to address to your sister-in-law or to get everyone in the family that thinks there's an issue to get together, read my book, Chronic Hope, Families in Addiction, and sit down and say, these are the boundaries that we're going to set, and we're going to hold her accountable. And we can do it with love in our heart. And we can just say, sis, we love you. We're not okay with the drinking, and we're not okay with the behavior. So going forward, we want to be clear that if you're sober, you're welcome in the events and you're welcome to be part of the family. But if you're not, we can't participate. Now, I want to be clear. If you think that she's getting to the point where she's putting herself or her kids in danger, then it's time to go to escalate, which is what I call Plan B. And we go to an intervention. We're going to start looking for an interventionist. And then we start looking for treatment. And again, this is also outlined in my book. And so I really want you, Anonymous, to get a copy of the book and take a look at it and give it a quick read. And again, you can call us, you can text us, you can book online, and we will be happy to spend some time doing what we call family case management. We've got great people available, myself, Kate Duncan, Ashley Harms, that are phenomenal case managers. And this is exactly what they like to do. And we're happy to help you with that process. So cool. It's like 3 in a row of the same thing. And this is fantastic. Okay, Sue C. How do you manage a family who has different ideas? Oh, this is great about what boundaries are appropriate with the addicted loved one. So this is a great carry through. This is a great follow through. So what we're talking about here is, so let's say we identified that let's go back to that family with the sister-in-law. Okay, great. So we know that she has a problem, but not everybody's on the same team. Not everybody agrees. Not everybody understands what to do or how to do it. What I would do as a family case manager is gather up as much of the family that's willing to participate and get them to start reading my book, Codependent No More, and maybe the book Boundaries, a couple others that are out there that are phenomenal, and just educate them on what's possible to start with. And maybe get the rest of the family to start listening to that and get them to listen to my podcast, get them to listen to maybe the YouTube channel and say, hey, I think we need to get some help. We need to bring in an outside consultant to get some help on what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because at the end of the day, what we're afraid of is that the addicted loved one or the alcoholic loved one is going to end up in a very bad situation. And we feel like we need to help them because we love them and we care about them and we don't want things to get worse. And we also love their family, their kids, and we don't want that to get worse for them too. So That's where I would go with that. Okay, we got another a write-in question from KC Gooding. It says, Kevin, what are some of the biggest challenges families face in implementing boundaries with their loved ones suffering from addiction? Oh my God, this is great. You guys are doing such a great job today of keeping things on track. This is wonderful. So the biggest challenges, I think, is what Sue was just asking about, is getting everybody on the same team, same page. You know, because I'm going to guarantee you that when we look at family systems and the engagement of the entire family, what we look at is that everyone tends to play a different role, right? So there's always going to be sort of the fight flight person, or the fight person, the flight person, the freeze person. There's going to be sort of the comic relief person. There's going to be the person that I call the ostrich that sticks their head in the sand and says, I don't know what you're talking about. Everything's fine. What's the big deal? Why are we even having this conversation? And again, it's about gathering the family together. The solution is gathering the family together and bringing in someone from the outside who does this for a living professionally and says, hey, let me help you. Let me walk you through the process. And you may not pull the trigger on anything right then and there. It may be more along the lines of doing lots of education. I've certainly had families where we meet and we do lots of education and they ask questions and they're like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And one of the big things I really like to do is educate the families on addiction and alcoholism. And I like to tell them there's generally three categories of people, right? There's when it comes to drinking or drugs. Well, let's start with drinking. There's the social drinker who can have a beer or two, a glass of wine or two, and walk away, and it's all good, and I'm fine. And that's great. And then we have what we kind of call the hard drinker. And the hard drinker can look a lot like an alcoholic, but what they end up doing is, given a sufficient reason, meaning their family, their spouse, their kids, their job, they get into some legal trouble, a friend sits them down and says, hey, I'm worried about you. They can actually control or stop based upon self-desire, and that they're like, you know what, I have a problem. I'm worried about losing my relationships. I'm worried about losing my job. I'm worried about losing my freedom. And then they can actually implement that and go through life that way. It's not a problem. So that's the hard drinker. Then we have the alcoholic. The alcoholic can't do that. They don't have the ability to filter. They don't have the ability to regulate or control. And they may think they do, and they may be able to do it for a short amount of time, but eventually, once they start, they can't stop, and the alcohol or the drugs take over and run the show. So that's kind of, I think I want to make sure, implementing boundaries to the loved one suffering from addiction. I think, Casey, the first thing is, the biggest challenge is getting everyone to understand where the person's at and understanding what addiction is. So that's where you got to come in with education. You can't really come in with a big club and just start knocking people on the head and saying, we're going to do an intervention and this is how it's going to be. It's really more about bringing in education and saying, hey, let me explain to you what alcoholism is. Let me explain to you what addiction is. Let me explain to you what boundaries look like and how they work and why. And let me show you how to implement them. And again, we call that Plan A. And in Plan A, we try to give someone an opportunity to get it back under control. And because what we're looking at is not just drugs and alcohol, but like work or school, and then behavior with the family. And we set parameters and we hold them accountable, and they can either do it or they can't. And if they can't, then we go to Plan B. But Plan B is with love and empathy and saying, hey, we're going to offer you a solution. And if they deny the solution and say, I'm not going to do that, then you got to be able to say, okay, cool, we'll respect your choice, but you're not living here. So there we go. We got another write-in question. This is awesome. Hi, Kevin. This is from Allison Rep. What are some of the best ways to support a family member after they return from rehab? Oh my gosh, that's great, Allison. Thank you so much. This is perfect. You guys are flowing naturally, nicely. What I always want people to do, well, first of all, I think there's kind of a step before this that I'm going to jump into. And then I'm definitely going to answer that question as well. What we want to do, let's say we did Plan A and it failed, and we did Plan B and we put them in treatment. Now we have a 30, 60, 90-day window while they're in treatment where the family can really lock in and start taking care of themselves and educating themselves and paying attention to, their roles. And I always tell people, you're not responsible for their addiction, but you are responsible for how you respond to it. And I hope that makes sense, because a lot of times family members think that they somehow, especially parents, like, oh my God, it's my fault that he's an alcoholic or an addict because of XYZ. And that's just really not how it works, but how you respond to it and how you hold them accountable in that process is something you can control and take responsibility for. And part of that process is educating yourself on addiction, alcoholism, and codependency, and the nature of the family system, and how to address that and how to take care of yourselves. And that's really critical. We're not going to just act like it's all the other person's fault. We're going to take a look at the entire family system and say, okay, I get it that they have a problem, but we got to take responsibility for how we're going to respond to that problem. And when they come home and they come back into the family, which is ultimately Allison's question, is how do we support them? It's by living in a world where everyone, I call it consistency, accountability, and transparency. We've got to start having consistency for everybody, not just your loved one. It's about everybody taking care of themselves, doing what's good for them, whether that's meetings, therapy, faith, exercising, nutrition, whatever it is. Everyone's got to start taking care of themselves. And then accountability is we've all got to start having people that we share things with and start being clear and concise with. So the addict or the alcoholic hopefully is going to have a therapist, maybe a sober coach. Maybe they're going to go to the 12-step world and get a sponsor and create a sober community. And that's going to create accountability for them. Same thing for the family members. They can get a therapist. They can get a therapist that understands codependency. They can go to their own 12-step world. They can create their own system of accountability of people that are fighting the same battle. And I think the most important thing you can do is, I get this question all the time, the most important thing you can do for your loved one is to get into your own recovery and take care of yourself. If we can change the family system while that person's in treatment, and then when we come home, and this is, phase 3 is the integration phase, right? That's when we have the great opportunity to change the entire family. And so that's a great question, Allison. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right. Who do we got next? Jen M. Fantastic. I think I'm going to need to take a drink here. I'm talking so much. Water or sparkling water. I think my brother, who's an adult, has a drinking problem, but I'm not around him all the time. How do I approach him? Well, Jen, that's a great question, because I get this all the time from people that are like, hey, I'm not sure where we go with this or how to approach this. What's the first thing I need to say to them? I will tell you that being direct and straightforward is the most important thing to do. Don't dance around it. Don't try to spy on them. Don't try to ask other people. Just go straight in, and but go straight in with a position of, hey brother, I love you, and I'm really worried about your behavior. Can we talk about that? I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm not trying to run your life. I'm not trying to micromanage you. I'm just telling you that as your sister, I love you, and I'm worried about what I see and what's going on. Is this something we can talk about? And have that sort of open format discussion. How they respond to that actually will tell us a great deal where we're going to go with that and what's going to happen. And again, read my book, Chronic Hope, Families and Addiction, because it's a play-by-play. It's a step-by-step formula there. All right, new question from KC. Kevin, how does the family identify the best or most appropriate treatment program for their loved one? That's a great question. So, and I know I keep redirecting people to read my books, but there's a reason for that I put step-by-step processes in there. So I always think it's important, if you're going to do an intervention, to hire an interventionist and bring somebody in that does this for a living. And I have in the book, I talk about how to pick somebody, the national programs and the national certifications that you're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. And ideally, if you're working with me and my group, we're going to help you pick an interventionist that we think is, knows what they're doing. We're big fans of Love in Action with Keith Bradley. We think he's fantastic, and there's plenty of others that we're very happy with too. Um, so how do you the most so the, you got to start going down like a decision tree, and the first question I always ask is cash or insurance, because it can cost $1,000 or more a day for 30, 60, 90-day treatment. So the question is, can you write a check and not expect to get anything back? And if the answer is no, then that takes us down a different path. Okay, what kind of insurance does the person have? Or do they have insurance? Because, if they have insurance, there are plenty of places around the country that will accommodate, take that as an in-network position, and that'll cost a lot less, probably the deductible, and you can kind of get those numbers figured out ahead of time. If they don't have insurance and money is a struggle, there are places around the country that are very low cost and affordable and also have scholarships. But that's where you got to have a good family case manager and a good interventionist that'll help you walk through those options and walk through the decision tree. Because the other things are what kind of drugs, what kind of drinking, how old are they, how much trauma, mental health issues, male or female, do we need gender specific, LGBTQ. There's lots of, history questions, lots of trauma history questions, stuff that we got to sort through so that we make sure we put the person in the right place. Wow, great questions. Oh my God, okay, I got to have some water. Oh boy. Okay. Marty C. As a member of the outreach community, a local outpatient facility here in Denver, as someone who is in long-term recovery, I'm actually acutely aware of the need for family program associated with an individual who is seeking treatment. Great. You're touching on my favorite stuff. Family programs are near and dear to my heart. I've developed one and had it running in 4 different treatment centers in Denver, and hoping to get that, I love doing consulting with treatment programs and helping them understand how to create a family program and how to train their staff. And in my own experience as an alcoholic, continued cycle of confrontation, instability, hope, and failure affect not only the husband or wife, but the children as well. My first attempt at treatment, the family program was not okay. I'm going to sort of scoot down to the bottom for where the questions are. Okay, my question is when a family, how do families navigate choosing a family program that fits their needs and the needs of the loved one? Well, great question. Sort of tailgating back onto Casey's stuff earlier, is that one of the things that we look at when we're helping someone pick a treatment program is, do they have a family program, and how does that family program work, and how much engagement does the family have? Because our belief system is the family has to be. You can't just drop somebody off at treatment like you're dropping off a TV at Costco and just picking up a new one. You actually got to get engaged in the process and start healing the entire family system. And that's, by the way, a big part of the book, Families in Addiction. The first part is, how do we get them to treatment? The second part is, okay, now they're in treatment, how do we take care of ourselves? And the third part is, how do we reintegrate? All right, let's see what else we got. I think there might have been another question or two. Oh, Sarah Z. What are the craziest behaviors you see from families that they normalize in the addiction cycle? Well, I don't want this to sound shame-based or critical, because I love all the families I work with. There's no doubt about that. But there's a phrase you'll hear a lot in my world, in the clinical side of things, is loving someone to death. And that sounds horrible, but here's the deal. Going back to a couple of questions ago, it's like, well, how do we, like I think Jen said, how do we know what to do and when to do it? Here's the thing. Just standing around and not doing anything and just watching, or acting as if it's not a problem. That's always a big thing for me. It's like, well, wait a minute. She's gotten 2 DUIs. And they're like, well, no, there was only one, but she managed to get out of the first one illegally. I'm like, okay, she's gotten 2 DUIs. She's lost a number of jobs. She has no relationship with the family. But everybody's going to act like it's no big deal. And that is a big deal. And that's really something we have to pay attention to. So I would say the answer to Sarah's question, loving someone to death, is, watching them continue to spiral out of control and doing nothing. Another thing that I've actually had families do is, Well, I'll actually take them down to the drug areas and buy the drugs for them because I would feel more comfortable with that than having them, do it themselves. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, we don't do that. That's not a good choice. If you're at that point, then what we need to do is probably, get them into some treatment right now. And then I'm going to tell you, the next thing I always hear is, well, he won't go to treatment. Okay, so that's why you use an interventionist. And then you set the boundaries that, okay, if you're not going to go to treatment after the intervention, that's cool, but you're not living here. And you're not going to continue to enjoy the support of the family if you're going to choose to live the drug and alcohol lifestyle, because they're going to kill themselves. That's where they're headed. The addiction, if they're going to continue to choose drugs and alcohol, we have to agree that that's the path they're headed down, and that's how it's going to end, and that's why we need to intervene. I hope that all makes sense. Sarah, great question. Thanks for asking that. Woo! Rebecca R. My 22-year-old daughter uses substances to manage her mental health issues. Okay, well, we're going to have a discussion about that. Depression and social anxiety. Mostly weed, but now it's moved to liquor. I'm worried about if I push her to get help, I might lose her because she has threatened suicide before. Okay, that's exactly what I was just talking about. Loving someone to death and not taking action. So I would tell you that your daughter, Rebecca, needs treatment, and she needs inpatient treatment to address the mental health and the suicidality and the drugs and the alcohol. By the way, I want to be clear with you. I hear this all the time that, well, they're self-medicating. That's not true. They're getting high and getting drunk. And that's just the harsh reality of the situation. And I don't support that process at all. I think you need to do things under the care of a psychiatrist and a therapist, and you need to be living in a support group and, or engaging actively in a support group. And I hope that makes sense. And so, again, Rebecca, you should definitely give us a call, and we're here to help you, because that is something we can definitely walk down the path with you on. All right. Woo! We're cooking. Susan M. I'm lost and feeling helpless. What resources would you recommend for family members? Oh, Susan, bless you. Thank you so much. My real jam in life is working with the family members. That's how I engage. That's where I come from. The resources that I would offer you are, educate yourself, by reading my books, by reading Codependent No More. Go to Al-Anon, try Codependence Anonymous, maybe try Adult Children of Alcoholics. Whatever works for you. That's what those groups are there for, is to give you a sense of hope and a sense of community and give you a solution. Believe it or not, those groups are not about constantly complaining about the alcoholic or the addict. It's about how to find a solution and how to take care of you. That's critical. I also would highly suggest that you see a therapist that understands addiction and codependency. And if you can't find any of that, you go ahead and email us or call us. And no matter where you are in the country, we'll help you walk through that process. Great question, Susan. We're here for you. Susie. My sister's name is Susie. Susie, I like that. What characteristics do you typically see passed down generationally in addicted families? Oh boy, great question. Well, we see two things, right? So I come from a family of addiction. So what we see is people that struggle with addiction and struggle with alcoholism, and have lots of issues and get into trouble. And one of the things that we had in my family is that we were always late to every single family function, and I don't mean 15 minutes or half an hour. I mean hours. It was consistent. We always lived in a state of turmoil, crisis, and drama and chaos. And when you're raised in that household, that's what becomes normal. You think that's normal. You think drama, chaos, and crisis are normal. And so one of the first things we have to do when we're working with family members that are struggling with codependency is help them understand that being in a constant state of crisis is not normal. That's something we want to get disengaged from. One of the analogies I like to use is, it's like every morning you wake up and you open your front door and there's a car from a roller coaster waiting for you. You have a choice. You don't have to get in the car and go on the roller coaster. But it takes a lot to get the family members to understand that they can disengage from that and pull away from that. And that's what we're here to help you with. That is the number one thing we want to do. Because if we can get the family members to start changing their behavior, it automatically changes the entire family system. And then we have a better chance of addressing the addiction or the loved ones that are struggling with addiction and alcoholism and saying, hey, you know what? We're not going to do this anymore. We love you, and we've got some solutions for you, and we want to help you. But if you're not going to take them, then we're just going to put some boundaries up and say, until you're ready, we're not going to do this. Generationally addicted families. So yeah, I think that's kind of the primary things that I would say, is that they live in a constant state of crisis, drama, and chaos, and they think that's normal. So like when I work with families, one of the first questions I always ask is, what's the history of mental health and addiction in your family? And they'll literally say, oh, there is none. It's just this guy. Only person ever in the history of the family. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So as we continue to talk more and more and more, they'll start talking about how, oh, well, this person went to jail, or this person when they were a kid was suicidal and got put into a psychiatric facility. And this person, stopped drinking. So he doesn't have a problem, but he's just horrible to be around. And almost instantly we start seeing the generational patterns of behavior. So that's the other thing, Sue. Great question. Oh my gosh, I love that question. Graham B. Oh, this is okay, Graham. Mom and or dad smokes weed. And the next thing we know, the son, who happens to be close to 18, is sent to treatment for doing the same thing. Graham must live in Colorado. How do you reconcile that with the parents and the kids? Well, Graham, that's a great question. And by the way, I get this all the time. I started my private practice in April of 2014 in Denver, Colorado. We still have an office there. We have an office here in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And the thing that would happen is that, the perspective of the parents would be, I don't have a problem, but my kid has a problem, so I shouldn't have to stop. And what I always tell them is, well, okay, I hear what you're saying. Would you be willing to take a look at your usage of alcohol or drugs while we're getting your son help? And are you willing to see that potentially that may be contributing to the problem? And let's just take a look at it. Let's just have a conversation about it. Is this realistic? And almost always what ends up happening is, the family has to admit that, yeah, okay, it's a little bit hypocritical for me to take my family member and tell them that they need to clean up their act, and I'm going to still be out there running and gunning. Now, I want to be clear. That doesn't mean that the entire family has to get sober, but the family has to take a look at what's going on and why and how, and address what's going on in their lives. And why, if you send somebody to treatment for 30, 60, or 90 days and you bring them home, is it really a great idea to walk around with a joint in your mouth, smoking pot and blowing it in their face, or having it lying around a house? Or, is that a good choice? And, the same thing I get is with alcohol. People are like, do we have to get rid of all the alcohol? Do we have to act like it doesn't exist? I'm like, no, that's an artificial reality. But what you have to be willing to do is take a look at the family system and how it's affecting the individual and how it's affecting everybody collectively. I think I answered your question, Graham. I hope so. All right. Who's next?
All right. This is our last question, Kev.
No, I don't want to. I want to keep going.
Well, if we get more in the comments, we'll keep going.
Okay, got it. Darcy C. My brother is struggling bad with drugs and alcohol, but my mom enables him like crazy by taking all his problems away. Oh, bless you, Darcy. This is one of my typical situations. How do you help your family when our mom is in denial about his problem? Okay, that's a great question. And I get this all the time. One of the most important things to do is start educating everybody. Have mom, make an appointment with us, or buy our book, or sit down with mom and watch the podcast or the videos, and help her to start getting out of the denial process. Because there's always somebody in the family that thinks it's their responsibility to clean up the mess and act like it didn't happen. And they actually think they're helping that person. And what they don't realize is that they're actually enabling them and creating a situation where things are going to get worse, right? the most important thing you can do is help an addict or an alcoholic start to experience their consequences and hold them accountable. And the classic thing I always get from these families is they get mad at the individual because they're like, what? Why isn't he taking care of himself? Why doesn't he solve his problems? Why doesn't he cook his own food? Why doesn't he clean his room? Why doesn't he do his laundry? I'm like, why should he? You keep doing it for him. He's not stupid. Why would he change his behavior? He has no incentive. So that's why I designed the program, the plan A, the plan B, and then going into how to take care of the family and how to reunite. So Darcy, I would say one of the most important things you can do is read my book, get mom on to come to she doesn't have to agree, but we can at least have a conversation, because the most important thing we can do is start putting cards on the table and getting that transparency and start looking at it and saying, Mom, come on, we got to be honest here. That's not true. That's not what happened. And the other thing you're going to probably see, Darcy, is that this has been going on for generations in your family. So we have to address the generational stuff that's going on here. So great question. Call, text, email, whatever we can do for you. We're here to help you. And I guess that's our last question. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. Really enjoyed all those questions. My gosh, I just love this. It's like one of my favorite things ever to do. And please, please, please don't be shy. If you or a loved one needs help, or someone whose family needs help, please, please, please turn them on to our Facebook page, our podcast, our YouTube channel, our website, chronichope.us, the Chronic Hope Institute. The books are the Chronic Hope, Families in Addiction, and Chronic Hope, Parenting the Addicted Child. We want to give you as many resources for free. And there's the book. The book's only $10. It's on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. It's right there available for you. We will do everything in our power to give you the information to make good decisions on how to help your family members. And we also have a video course. So if you don't have time, this is a great answer to some of those questions. If you don't have time or can't get everybody on board to do an actual appointment with us online, you can do the video course, which is basically an hour-long discussion and understanding of everything that's in the book, and it's only $37. So please, please, please go to our website and check that out. All right, guys, as usual, great questions, great audience participation. Love you all. Thanks, everybody. Happy Father's Day. Happy Juneteenth. Talk to you later.